it's Anna from Bright Lane Gardens, and I'm coming at you today from my favorite room in our entire house, and that is our solarium, or the south-facing room with all the windows, which is of course home to all of my indoor plants. You can find me here anytime throughout the fall and winter. This is where the magic happens, and this is my propagation station behind me. Today we're going to review how to propagate a fiddle leaf fig from a cutting in water. Fiddle leaf figs are among my favorite plants to propagate because the success rate is seriously so high. It's up there with succulents without a doubt. There's just a few extra steps that I take in my process to ensure a higher success rate, and we're going to review those steps today, along with all the materials you'll need, how to successfully propagate a cutting, and how to choose a healthy mother plant. Without further ado, let's get started. For today's propagation, we're going to go ahead and use the water propagation method. You can also propagate fiddle leaf fig trees in soil, and the method works just fine. I do tend to have a higher success rate when I use the water propagation method, and I tend to see roots a couple weeks sooner than when I use the soil propagation method. So that's why we're going to be focusing on the water propagation method today. There are just a few key materials that you'll need to have on hand before you get started today. Starting with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Anything over 50% will work just fine. Some rooting hormone. This is the powder-based rooting hormone. A lot of people say rooting hormone is optional. For me, it's mandatory. I use it every single time I propagate, and I've had a lot of success with it. It does also help to reduce bacterial growth, which is oftentimes challenging during the propagation process. This is a brand that I use and trust frequently. A little bit goes a long way, and it's super inexpensive, so it's really worth investing in if you want to practice propagating this winter. I will link this one in the description below in case you want to use this brand too. A clean and sharp pair of pruning shears. And last but not least, any sort of glass or plastic see-through container that you can easily visualize the bottom of your cutting through without having to remove the water every time. Starting out with a healthy mother plant is absolutely the key to success when it comes to any form of propagation. This fiddle leaf fig that's next to me right now is about 3 years old. I purchased it from fastgrowingtrees.com about 3 years ago and started taking cuttings once it was about a year old. I have only ever taken cuttings from this singular plant, so I'm talking about probably over 30 cuttings over the course of 2 years, and they have all taken root and done very, very well. Every single time I trim back this tree, it comes back with vigor, which means it's not only a healthy plant, but I'm cutting it in a really sustainable way, which means the mother plant gets to continue to grow while still producing a lot of baby fiddle leaf figs too. I do want to warn against purchasing larger plants like this from some of the big box stores. It's so common that they come with fungus or pests on them already, and this is simply because of the way that they're stored. They're stored amongst hundreds and hundreds of other indoor plants with very little airflow, so they're just super prone to diseases and pests. I really recommend ordering from a trusted company like fastgrowingtrees.com. I will go ahead and link this specific tree in the description below so you can take a look at it yourself. But just be wary, anywhere that you're buying trees from that are packed in like that, it's just really, really important to inspect the tree fully for pests or diseases before you bring it inside your home, since a lot of those pests and diseases are contagious to the other surrounding plants, and you certainly don't want to lose your entire fleet at once. You might notice this tree has a bit of a unique shape in the sense that the top is really lopsided towards one end. That's because this entire top 2 feet here is actually an offshoot from the last set of cuttings that I took. This just grew really rapidly, but it's also all new growth, which makes it ideal for taking cuttings from. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off this entire branch starting here, and I can probably get at least 4 good sized cuttings from this singular branch. Before taking your cutting, you want to of course make sure that your tree is in good shape. So what I'm looking for is any signs of powdery mildew or fungus on the leaves. I want to feel for a sticky type texture on the leaves, anything that indicates that something just isn't quite right. I'm also going to be looking for brown spots or any signs of damage on the leaves, as these leaves will not make as great of cuttings as some of the other leaves will. This tree's in great shape. It's my baby. I take care of it and I'm constantly looking at it, so we can get quite a few cuttings off of this today. Before I take my cuttings, I want to make sure that my shears are completely disinfected to keep both my cuttings and my mother plant safe from bacterial growth. I'm going to take my rubbing alcohol, dampen a paper towel with it, and just go ahead and wipe down all of the blades until they look nice and clean. From there, I'm going to go ahead and make my first cut. So I want to cut this guy right down at the base. If you can, try to get it directly below a leaf node if you can. You always want to cut on a bit of an angle so that water and bacteria can't be held on the top of the mother plant where you cut off this branch from. As you can see, just above the cut, I do have 2 leaf nodes right here, which is perfect. I'm going to use that to make my first cutting. This section here is about 2 feet long. My goal is to get 4 cuttings out of this. So as I look, I want to make sure I'm cutting between the leaf nodes, leaving enough space for roots to grow, and I want to make sure it's evenly spaced so I don't have too small of a section. For my first cutting, I'm going to go ahead and select a 4 to 6 inch section, this guy right down here at the bottom, and I'll make my cut. Again, you want to cut that on an angle, so as you can see, the top of my stem is on an angle here and doesn't run the risk of collecting any water or any other type of debris. Now, a cutting of this size certainly does not need 3 giant leaves on it. I usually aim to only leave 1 leaf on my Fiddle leaf fig, and it does not need to be a leaf of this size. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off this leaf here and this leaf here. He does look a little bare, but I promise this is all that you need to successfully propagate a Fiddle leaf fig. I have 3 cuttings that are now ready to be rooted, so my next step is going to be to use my rooting hormone. I like to dump out a little bit in the cap just because I'm going to use this for so many plants. I don't want to cross-contaminate anything. You really just need to take the cut end at the very, very end and dip just the slightest amount of rooting hormone onto it. Just make sure that the entire cut part is coated. Do that with all of the cuttings that you take. And then I like to leave those sit for about 10 minutes just so that the ends can seal up. Very last step is going to be to place all of our cuttings into a glass jar or container like this. Mason jars work really well for this because they're super sturdy, really easy to clean, and you can see through them. So I just love to use mason jars for something like this. It's okay to put multiple cuttings in the same jar as long as there's a little bit of airflow going around. You just don't want to run the risk of any fungus or mold growth. My cuttings are all set and ready to grow. Now comes the hardest part of all, and that's waiting. Typically, you should start to see roots emerge in 4 to 6 weeks if you're using the water propagation method. Sometimes you luck out and get them a little bit earlier. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but if you don't see any roots coming out by about that 2-month mark, it likely means that your cutting simply is not going to form roots, and that's okay too. Not all cuttings will. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Just every once in a while, you get one that doesn't want to take. For now, I'm going to go ahead and leave this guy on a windowsill. You want to make sure that wherever you're putting your cuttings that they're not in the direct sun. The direct sun is actually a little bit too intense for a cutting like this, so you want to make sure it's a window that gets a good amount of sunlight, but indirect sunlight is best. I already know that I don't want to wait 4 to 6 weeks to finish this video, so I'm going to go ahead and show you a cutting that I took about 2 months ago from that very same plant. This guy, as you can see, has a lot of roots growing. I left him in the water a little bit longer than I normally would have because I did want to show him off for this video, but this is about 8 weeks of growth. You can certainly go ahead and plant this long before it gets that many roots on it, but this guy will take off in the soil right away. So all I'm going to do with this guy, I just have a pot of prepared potting soil. This is a little bit of a finer potting soil, like one that you would probably use for seedlings. I find that the finer the soil is, the easier it is for my new roots to go ahead and take hold in that soil. So all I'm going to do is pot him up in there. Now the cuttings, since the roots didn't grow in this soil, will sometimes need a little bit of extra support. A couple small rocks can go in on either side of the stem there, whatever it takes to just make sure that he stays upright, because it will take a couple more weeks for those roots to really take hold in the soil. Within about a month after potting it up, you should start to see some new leaf growth on your cutting. This plant will eventually grow to be the same size as the mother plant that you initially took the cutting from. One last very important step is you definitely want to take care of your mother plant after you take a cutting, especially a cutting the size that I took today. Give her a lot of water the first couple of days after you initially take those cuttings, and just keep a close eye on the mother plant and make sure that she doesn't seem to be in any sort of stress. You definitely want to take breaks in between taking cuttings. I like to wait at least 4 to 6 weeks, so as soon as you start to see your cuttings root, it's probably safe to go ahead and take another small cutting from the mother plant. Fiddle leaf figs are such a popular plant right now. They make an awesome gift and they're just a really fun centerpiece to have in any indoor room in your home. They really just require a little bit of indirect sunlight. I water mine about once a week, so the care for these plants is pretty minimal. And if you're looking for an easy, versatile houseplant that you can easily propagate into many, many more plants over the years, fiddle leaf fig is absolutely the way to go. If you have any questions for me on the process that I use to propagate my fiddle leaf figs, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. Or if you have any tips and tricks of your own that you want to share with us, I encourage you to leave them in the comments below. If you enjoy watching content like this and want to learn more about indoor gardening and plant propagation, then definitely subscribe to our channel. This winter, I'm so excited to expand my horizons into a little bit of hydroponics, more propagation, more indoor plants, whatever it takes to ward off those winter blues and keep our green thumbs going over the winter months. That's what I want to do here on our channel. Please take the time to subscribe and like our channel. It seriously helps out small businesses like ours so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I sure hope to catch you next time. Please take the time to subscribe and like our channel. It seriously helps out.